All right, let's take a peek into pivoting and relays. All right, when we talk about pivoting, we're basically keeping in mind here not every attack is directly reachable or exploitable from the attacker. This basically means there's something in between it. Now, that something could be a DMZ, demilitarized zone. It could be a firewall in between it. It could be another computer, whatever the case. There's just something not directly reachable to our target machine that we want. And we want to basically bypass and overcome another machine, possibly, to then go about pivoting our attack. Now, sometimes I refer to the term as beachheads and so forth, sometimes referred to as well. But needless to say, this is basically where we take over one machine to maybe then take over another machine to do our attacks on and so forth. So it's not coming directly from us, but it's being kind of brought through another machine to then do the targets and so forth. When I was doing pen tests at the ISP, we basically had 3 days to get everything done, and it wasn't enough. So I ended up VPNing in from home to continue on for another week and a half. And during that, they gave me access to a machine that I was VPN into that did not have proper permissions on the domain environment for me to do stuff. So I couldn't run tools off of the machine that I was connected to and so forth. So what I had to do is I had to pivot my attacks from another machine. So first I had to go around, find a machine that I can get into, which I ended up finding one that was in the trust domain and so forth that was vulnerable. That allowed me to go in, and from there I was able to do additional scans and different types of attacks from that machine that I compromised. Now, this is again also part of the pivoting. So I was pivoting my attacks from another machine. So I couldn't directly get into it, at least not for where I was, because I was somewhat restricted. But again, just because you're restricted doesn't necessarily mean you don't have access at all. Remember yesterday I showed you guys when we went to the Google site and we popped in something, and we were able to, I was looking up the CSI FBI report, and we came across a site that said forbidden access. You guys remember that? And then I was able to go in and to Google and put in some different queries, right, some different operators, and was able to actually see that we found 6 additional documents, or 6 documents in that folder that we had forbidden access to. So just keep in mind, when it comes to this kind of stuff, don't take no as an answer necessarily. It may mean that it's still no, that you don't have access. However, keep your possibilities open. Just because the book says it needs to be this and this and this way doesn't necessarily mean that's the only end-all be-all of ways, right? So always think outside the box. Tools will only do so much, especially automated tools. So make sure you get yourself comfortable with some specialized tools that you can manipulate everything, instead of having everything automated where you just click a button, check a checkbox, and then you're done. But find that, got to think outside the box when it comes to this stuff, right? So every attack has a starting point, which can be used as a pivot point into another system. It's also part of the post-exploitation activities and can be achieved broadly, again broadly here, broad terms, in 2 ways. We can use Metasploit, post-exploitation modules, and again, what I would recommend there, if you haven't already had some exposure with Metasploit, check out the securitytube.net and check out their Metasploit primer scenario. It's a very good 25 videos on Metasploit that will take you from start to finish, from the install to taking over systems and so on using that. If you want, I have a I have it on the YouTube channel where I have one called Metasploit. It's a Metasploit demo, and basically I'm using the social engineering toolkit within Backtrack 5 R3, and I basically am using that and using Metasploit an interpreter within it, within the social engineering toolkit and so forth. So you can check that out if you want, but not a necessity. And of course, looking at Netcat, and Netcat's been around for a long time, and obviously was always referred to as the Swiss Army knife of hacking tools. It does a lot of cool things. We'll be able to spend a little time on this, and I'll be giving you guys some additional resources on some things, because some of the terminology was actually coined by certain people, and I'll provide you some of the resources there. Then one more to go. Here it is. There it is. How about that? This was summary 9. How about that? All right, so Netcat creates simple TCP UDP pipes to read and write raw data across networks. It was originally written for the Unix by a hobbit. Saying you thought the hobbit was the one that actually did the 5 armies and all that fun stuff, right? And found the ring, but no. Available on both Unix and Windows, and also many versions available. We have basically the cousins like GNU, Netcat, SoCat. Another big popular one is called CryptCat, and we also have LinkCat that you can use as well. So again, lots of different options that we can use there, and so forth. If you look in your slides, I believe there's the appropriate. They have the download links for downloading those with the appropriate websites that you can go to for the individual different cousins of Netcat and so forth. So again, lots of cool things and so forth along with that. Okay, so let's take a peek into backdoors with Netcat. And here again, we can use Netcat to create a backdoor. Backdoor, not the front door, not the side door, but a backdoor. It can be used for both approach types, such as listening and reverse connection. And this is where it gets really interesting, because we can do what's called a reverse shell. And we can basically get a reverse connection from our target machine to our hacker machine. And that's pretty cool. Some of the basic usage stuff where we can go in, we can set up the server. This is basically what we're going to be connecting into. So if we wanted to connect into, basically create a backdoor on those machines, we basically put Netcat in listening mode. In this case here, we just put a -L in there, right? And then we put a -P, and we put the port number that we want. In this case, 4444. Then on the client setup, we can use Netcat, or we can even use Telnet as you saw in the video. And we put in whatever the local host is, or whatever the IP address is, then the port number of 4444. We can also exchange messages, so we can type in either client and server and see the messages at the other end. And we must be root if we're opening a port under 1024. And hopefully you know that the first 1024 to first 1023 ports are your commonly used ports. And again, if you wanted to use those, you need to be root, root access. Now what we could do is do things like put it in persistent mode. And basically this means that whenever we're, as I mentioned in the video, whenever we're using the uppercase L, it means we're keeping the session active, or after the session has been disconnected, it will still stay in listening mode if you use the uppercase L. And that way we can continually come back every time and so forth. And that needs Netcat 2 release by David Perez. You can check out the website at the Radio, blogspot.com, 2008-09 NC2-Netcat without a couple of annoyances.html. Review the options for specific Netcat 2 command options and so forth. So you can check that out. Pretty cool stuff. Other things, shoveling of the shell. And again, we got to see that in action within the second video, right? Well, we got to shovel the shell in there and so forth. So the attacker has gained access to the victim's machine and wants to have shell access to it remotely. Now on the victim's machine, we would basically put in your Netcat -L, right, in listening mode, and -P, and put the port number in this case 444. Well, looks like there might be a typo. So it should be 4 4s, then the -E with the bash, or for on a Windows machine, we would put in the cmd.exe. Right? And then on the hacker's machine to the client, we then put in the Netcat localhost or whatnot with the port number that we specified. Obviously, a small typo needs to be fixed, but it's going to be 4444 for the client victim's machine, on the server, and on the client. All right, very cool. All right, other things. When it comes to shoveling shell, on the victim's machine, the server, right, we basically can also do other things. For instance, here we can pass it on to a file as well. You can see there. On the hacker's machine and the client, we then just Netcat into the localhost, the port. We need to hit the Control-C after the file's finished transferring, as the connection is not closed automatically. Right? So we have, again, ability to do things like that. So once we close that connection, boom, we're sort of good to go. Now it's useful to save the file rather than just dumping it into the screen. So on the victim's machine, again, on the server here, we use, as we just saw, with our file, and on the hacker's machine, we just put in the opposite. You still need to hit Control-C to close the connection, and so forth. So again, when it comes down to how do you know when it's finished, well, kind of take a little, say, give it a little time depending on the file that you're copying over and what the case that you're doing there and what you're grabbing and so forth. However, where it gets really interesting and where we're going to spend, I guess, a little time on, and I'll try to do a good job explaining everything there, but here we can also use Netcat as a port scanner.